topic.
Next topic is
Monte.
LEC. So for those of you who don't follow, LEC is the professional franchise, has to be said, franchise. This is the key part of this league that Riot runs in Europe. And Riot has a problem, you see. And the problem is that Cadril, their by far biggest co-streamer in the English language, has created his own team. And he exists in the nether realm of what are called the ERLs, which is the tier 2 scene that is operated by Riot. But unlike, if you guys are coming from other games, Counter-Strike, for example, there is no interaction between the tier 1 and the tier 2 scene. There isn't a way for these teams to get into and compete at the premier level. Now, his team, which is called Cadril's team, which is called Los Ratones, has a bunch of famous streamers, former professional players who are now playing in a team that is heavily promoted by this big co-streamer that has created an entire universe of content around it and that is very, very popular. And so people want to see this team compete. And indeed, it would be good for viewership. It has to be said. Nobody's debating whether this is a good move for viewership. So what Riot has done is they have taken their closed ecosystem, which it must be said, Riot created the closed ecosystem. They did it. They previously had a system where you could promote, and now you cannot, right? And so they created this closed ecosystem, and now they are saying, well, we're going to change. Last year we changed to like the 3-season system, which they call splits. We're going to use one of those splits, and we're going to have interaction between the amateur scene and the professional scene, and they're going to be able to compete. And obviously, this makes LEC owners angry because they paid tens of millions of dollars for exclusive competitive rights at the top level. And particularly, this made Karmine Corp, the French team, very angry because they were basically the former iteration of Los Ratones, which is an extremely popular ERL team, hosted by basically owned by a major co-streamer. And even they had to pay $20 million or whatever, the premium price.
To be fair as well, they are worried about Los Ratones usurping them as the most insufferable
I think
fan
that's
base.
less of an issue because they're never going to reach the French audience. So, like, how much do they really care? I'm sure there's some of that, right? I'm sure there's some of that, but they do.
I mean, I was making a joke about both fan bases being insufferable showers of shit.
I thought Monte was going to say,
by the way,
well, it's not an issue because they don't have a chance to overtake
that's
KZ
even
as the
something
most insufferable
that
fan
I have
base.
seen very rarely discussed because this whole topic, because of how popular Los Ratones, became two things. It became, do you like Los Ratones? If so, this must be good. And would you like to see Los Ratones play? If so, then it must be good. Like, people ignored all the principles. Like, put it this way, Kometo, who I normally am not aligned with, I am completely on his side right now, right? He actually has a way better test case to be allowed a guest slot into the LEC years ago instead of having to buy in than Los Ratones does.
Sure.
Did you know that before he ever got into the LEC, Karmine Corp used to fill actual real-world stadiums as if they were fucking Real Madrid in football just to sign players, to have exhibition games against teams, like not even real tournaments. Like, they could fill a whole stadium where, like, Riot, if they held their own finals of LEC, would be lucky to get 5,000 into a stadium to see literally the GOAT of EU win another championship. They couldn't do it. They could barely do that, mate. So Karmine Corp's case was way more slam dunk. They even had an equally large, just wasn't in English, massive streamer associated. And then they also had, let's check notes, a national fan base that is mobilized behind them. If anyone ever deserved a guest slot where you don't pay, and in fact, by the way, I even think the difference is you might even, as the other teams have agreed to let Karmine Corp come in, mate. They were going to bring so much to the league. You could see how the G2s, the one, were ready to and bring them in and then banter with them and attend these events. Everyone wanted them in. The difference is no one thinks, and by the way, here's another one for you, Los Ratones fans. Karmine Corp paid their players. They had their players in ARLs. They housed them. They didn't do stuff like just go, lol, are you ready? Do you know everyone loves to make fun of everyone in esports? Lol, you're doing it for the exposure. That's what Cadril's fucking players, as far as I can tell you, dickhead, to some of those famous European players of all time is lols. Well, you'll get your stream exposure by playing for me. I just get to be an owner for free, essentially. I get it's the craziest min-max I've ever seen in esports. So one, Karmine Corp basically should have already had that, in my opinion. Like, I think that part's insane. And then also, then you come to this part where, what was the other thing?
Karmine Corp deserves to be in the league because of their fan base.
No, that was the other thing I was going to say. Something everyone always gets wrong. We always forget this. I forget this. Is did you know the most recent slots sold in the LEC, where they weren't sold by Riot, obviously, that was ages ago. They sold the 10 teams already. When people bought other people's slots, a lot of people forget this detail. You didn't even just pay 30 million euros or 20 million euros. You paid 20 or 30 for part of the slot. You paid to rebrand someone else's slot. Rogue is Na'Vi. If you go and look, as far as I know, Rogue has partial ownership, and Na'Vi paid for like the majority to rename it. Now, I think it was the same thing with KSE when they bought. Which one was theirs? I forget if theirs was the Astralis one.
Yeah.
Or was that BDS's? I think theirs was the Astralis one, and BDS was Misfits. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, as far as I know, the last massive multi-billion-dollar deals, which are way above the original valuation, hence the whole point of a franchise league, by the way. LEC is one of the only leagues that's managed to make that work. Was even the idea you can look it up that you don't even get the whole thing. Look up the Rogue one where it's like Rec Global or whatever. As far as I know, you bought like say 60%, and then they keep bro, I paid 30 million for 60%, and then he gets in for free. And then lastly, there's a quick detail that I always see everyone get wrong on this, which is they go, hey, bro, it's one tournament, it's a preseason tournament, it's no biggie. No, you literally can become the LEC champion and then go to first stand, the international tournament, and by the logic of Riot, could become the world champion as a team that until 10 minutes ago you weren't paying anyone. Like, what is that? It's actually, no joke, this is the test case of credulity if you are a fan. Like, to think this is a unanimous good, you have to know nothing about the economics of the industry.
Yeah.
By the way, with the team sales, like I find it hard to like track and remember all of them. Obviously, Schalke sold for whatever, Misfits sold at some point. Sometimes it's like we're taking the slot, sometimes it's part ownership, whatever. I do think I can't remember the specifics, or I'm not even sure I know the specifics of like the Rogue Na'Vi thing. I do think though some of these numbers that get bandied around are not really accurate at all, and by that I mean, for example, I think part of Na'Vi going into Rogue is that they're saying we will assume all of your debt, because by the way, Infinite Reality are in massive debt. By the way, late payments with players, like all sorts of bullshit going on there. And I don't think that they paid them some like massive lump sum of here is 20 mil like liquid cash. I think that a lot of these deals, and the Misfits one, by the way, is the biggest, that gets reported, and this fucking rival idiot who makes YouTube videos was like pushing this out as well as if it was fact. Like, they sold it for $50 million cash. No, they fucking didn't. I'm not even sure like if any literal money was actually transactioned. I think they basically worked around an evaluation, and obviously lots of moving parts. But I think it's important to say that, like, with lots of these big deals, those huge lump sums aren't actually changing hands, so far as I know. Like, I know Ben, I don't even know what he's doing now, but the owner of Misfits at the time, I don't think they were receiving anything like that amount of actual money. It's all very complicated and gets in the weeds. I think Schalke was actually the deal where the most amount of pure money was going through, and I think the reason for that was because their football team was actually in such dire straits and got literally relegated from the Bundesliga. They're like, no, we actually need cash or our fucking football team might go under. I think a lot of these other numbers are a bit sort of quasi, you know, a little bit of equity here, a little bit of value in kind there. But to your point, original point, Thorin, is like, yeah, Cadrel, as far as I know, does not pay his players anything. The whole thing is VIK. Like, the whole thing is VIK. It's like how much your stream has been bolstered by my viewership and exposure and whatever. Like, the idea that these guys get to just, like, slide in the back door is mental. Also, the wording that Riot's used around this, which is basically, we're trying out this thing to see if it works. Fuck you. No, you're not. Because if it's not Los Ratones, you never would have tried this in the first place. You're doing it purely because it's Los Ratones. And if they're no longer in the equation, or if they become in the LEC permanently, you will never do it again. The only time you ever will is if a new Cadrel spawns, and then he makes another team. You're like, you know
which,
what?
By the way, a new Cadrel will not spawn because they will never give casters co-streaming rights again because of this. Like, you'll notice that they very deliberately, they announced the World co-streamers today. Why can't any of the casters who are not at Worlds get co-streaming rights? Why is that? Because they don't want to create another Cadrel.
What Rich is saying is a very salient point too. This is something a lot of people also missed. Riot themselves, because remember, the leak was almost certainly from the teams like Karmine Corp. If you look at who it was motivated for, and they knew how it would play. The leak itself just said, essentially, congrats, Los Ratones is joining the year, right? That's not how Riot would have built it. Riot did this thing where they thought they were being coy, where they were like, not the old owners of the team, they were like, oh, we'll have 2 slots for EMEA. Listen to how the 2 slots are decided. We'll have like the winner of EMEA LA summer that has not yet to be concluded, so we don't know yet if that'll be Los Ratones or not. And then what we'll do is the other one, you know how we got rid of that whole circuit point? It's sort of like that. Whoever was just the most successful throughout the year, that's definitely Los Ratones, then they're going to be in. So what you're saying is no matter what happens at the end of the year, one of the two teams will be Los Ratones. The other one, by the way, we not only don't care about, we essentially just allowed that to actually create this scenario where it has to be Los Ratones that come in. I agree with Rich. The craziest lucky people ever in this equation is whoever the fuck the other team is that gets to just ride the coattails of Los Ratones. Because I agree, if Los Ratones did this one split and then literally shelled the team, by the way, they even implied that almost as like a threat, didn't they? Maybe I'd just shut it down or whatever. I'll never spend any money. He even blatantly said he'd never spend the LEC money. He said even if he found it, listen to how bad the optics are when you've sold slots for this. He said on his stream that if he found a bag of like 20 million euros on his doorstep, he would never buy an LEC slot. That's the guy you're giving one for free. And then you're turning around and when Kometo gets mad, people going, why is he salty? As the usual fucking pleb mindset. So I think that part is also fucking mad in itself because it's so clearly just reverse engineered to get this one specific team in. But because they're Riot, they don't have the nuts to just say, we're just inviting Los Ratones. That's it. We're making a guest slot for Los Ratones. We want Los Ratones. And then you have to, as usual, Riot also has to pretend that the rule just happens to favour exactly what they want. And I also agree, if Los Ratones goes away and it really is just like Barca and fucking Nord Esports as the others, then those teams will very quickly be, those guests will be very quickly escorted out of the back door via the servants entrance, I imagine. So no, the whole thing is so incredibly cynically done.
Yeah, I mean, look, having watched this from a distance, it's like it really sort of makes me wonder about like why it is only Los Ratones you would extend this to, and only specifically in this region. And it's like, you know, for instance, why wouldn't you do this for like other orgs that are like hugely popular that don't have teams right now and aren't active? Like, why wouldn't you consider, for example, you know, we're going to talk about how LCS is coming back. Why wouldn't you reach out to TSM and be like, let's work something out? Or, you know, because like, I get why they want to do it in terms of like just the raw popularity. But the problem you've got is you can't then say to your business partners, look, we know we charged you 20 million for the privilege, but have you seen Cadrill's numbers? They're going to pay for itself many times over. A rising tide raises all ships, guys. There was none of that energy when you were nickel and diming back in the franchise league era when these things were coming out. You were even gaslighting all of the people that were buying into it, telling them these were assets that could only appreciate in value. When, of course, we know the reality now.
You know the common refrain also, why don't you just pay back all the franchise fees? Brother, they've successfully conned someone into selling a cow for magic beans. Yeah. You don't fucking offer a trade back option for exactly one to what you're mentalist. Well, I've already got the money. The one thing I'll never do is give up the franchise fee, mate. Whatever I got from that stays in my Smaug fucking den.
Well, also, I mean, paying 10 European teams back their franchise fees would cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, because they would sell them at, first off, Riot just signed a new team participation agreement, which is the re-upping of the franchise model with the teams. And so these teams have leverage, and you can't just abolish them because then you get sued and you would lose because you are in violation of a contract. And like very clear violation of the contract for you to continue running the league so that these assets have value. And also, you know, as big as Riot is, you don't fuck with the billionaires that are behind the venture capital entities of these teams that you, by the way...
LECs in fucking Germany as well, bro. Those laws that you were going to get annihilated by that.
But I mean, Riot forced the shotgun wedding of investors to the teams, and now there are big, bad, very wealthy investors that are involved, much wealthier collectively, especially than Riot Games. So you don't want to get into a legal battle with these people.
Yeah. But just also as well, I just want to add on, like, there probably is some sort of compromise where you could all meet in the middle. I mean, first, let's also just add to this. Like, Los Ratones, they're not very good. I mean, like on an LEC level, you know, we're seeing them struggle to even get to the breadcrumb trail that would potentially bring them into the league. The talk about them potentially being like airlifted to have a chance to go to Worlds.
And I would say to people who are thinking that this isn't true, remember how Karmine Corp was winning everything and then took that roster into LEC and immediately got shit stomped.
Yeah. I mean, like, you have to understand.
They didn't have Nemesis though, bro. You don't understand this guy, mate. I've seen him go toe to toe with Chovy's alt account on solo queue, and let me tell you.
So the other problem you've then got is, like, if Cadrill can we just put this on the table? We've obviously done a show against Cadril with the EWC bag, and he probably thinks at this stage we all fucking hate him and we're banging on him for no reason. And oh man, it's hard at the top. You only have haters, etc., etc. But like, what qualifies him to be an owner? Like, what mechanism does he engage in on a daily basis?
Look, I don't
that would
know.
make him...
You know, if in my experience, if you're a former caster, being a team owner, you know, it comes really natural.
No, but hang on. You're an educated, guy that's held jobs in companies, Like,
as someone who was literally Cadrill's actual boss, I can tell you that I wasn't sat there thinking, you know what? Give it a couple of years.
One day.
This guy.
No, but here's the thing. There's a very salient point you're making as well, which is this. Even consider two famous instances of one franchising and one what they do in the VCT partnership. So back in franchising, one of the sets of people who set the wheels in motion for franchising, Immortals, who at the time had been in the Summer Split finals, did not get into franchising because their application was considered subpar, and therefore they were not deemed to be either like financially or in terms of like brand fit a good partner to have in the league. Then for VCT, the aforementioned Carlos incident meant that G2 couldn't be in VCT initially, right? So the premise goes, like, we are checking people who know how to run a competent business. You might know the reason why, Monty. They don't want people to get paid late. They want to know that you will not like scam the players. They want to know that you can set up an environment, blah, 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 all this. Again, where would any of that fit Cadrill's thing, by the way?
Like,
I'm told all the time Carlos is evil, right? For how he treated Perks. He literally made Perks with the side of a pen a millionaire who was set for life in his home country. But Cadrill just saying, essentially, like I said, what everyone else tells me is a grift in esports, which is you tell them, I'll give you free exposure in exchange for your labor, which I will profit off. I'm told that, and by the way, everyone goes, no, but Thorin, they all got sponsors. As far as I can tell, all from the fucking agency that represents Cadrill. Am I missing something? Like, it's the most insanely like incestuous business in that sense. Well, but that somehow makes you like the best possible owner. Someone who basically is on some like fucking do some wild angle where you haven't proven anything.
Like what I'm getting at, just to dial into the specifics, is Riot Games has always had like an equivalent of what we have in football in England, which is the proper person's test. Are you suitable to be an owner? They have held some people up to unbelievably high standards. They have held businesses up to unbelievably high standards because they have concerns about like where the money's coming from. They've denied people entrance into the league on the basis that we've looked at their financials that they presented to us and they don't make sense to us as a business, so we don't want to take that risk. And obviously, we also know, because it's Riot, they wield it like a weapon. Sometimes they say that and it isn't true. And sometimes they do turn a blind eye to people whose particulars might not be as great. And, they've let owners that have engaged in negative behavior just continue to stay in the league. And then they've been really overzealous with other owners. So my question is, if Cadrill has a stream team where everyone is playing for the vibes and getting paid in exposure, and therefore it is not a real organization, something Cadrill himself has said publicly, repeatedly, that it's not a real org, and therefore they shouldn't be held up to the standard of other orgs, and how could I possibly raise 20 million? Why should I be expected to pay? We're not a real org, we're a stream team, right? So if he's saying all of that, well, what happens when you bring them into the league, and now he's got a stipend to manage? He'll have to pay the players. Don't they have a minimum salary requirement in the league, right?
Yes.
I mean, within Germany, you'd have to anyway.
Yeah, right. You've got German labor law to negotiate all of a sudden. You've got an entirely new level of behavioral standards to enforce upon your players, which, by the way, unless you'll have to hire a general manager. He can't do it. I mean, unless is he going to stop streaming?
Oh, no, don't worry. They already hired Kieran from Love is Blind UK. He is their current general manager. So safe hands, safe hands.
You know what I mean? It's like I don't think like Riot are thinking this through optically for like what industry people think about this. Like if I was an organization, because like say whatever you want about Karmine Corp fans, Karmine Corp is an incredibly well-run organization. They have done like really good things in the space, as loath as I am to say it out loud, because of the fan base. They've been transformative for the European scene. And by the way, that's not an accident. G2 were that before that, like they obviously have a fantastically well-run org. They hire competent people, or rather they used to. They were run really well and they had managers across the board, from social media management to behavioral management to, you know, PR. They had all of these competent. Does Cadrell have any of that?
By the way,
or does he offer that himself?
I'll
The
tell
answer
you
is
an
no.
obvious reason why that question is a good question, Richard, because the same story has already happened in LTA and it's happening again. So they gave a guest slot to 100 Thieves, and now Sentinels apparently is going to get in. Do you know why there's no uproar? Because 100 Thieves and Sentinels are real esports orgs that all the other competitors acknowledge and probably want to be in business with. They'd obviously prefer they bought in for the millions, but if they can't, they'll take that. I think that that is very telling, that has conspicuously got no outrage and no behind-the-scenes leaks to journalists. But this one where, yes, Cage, by the way, Nemesis said on his own stream he gets paid nothing, because famously a fan asked him, would you join an LEC team for 3 times your current salary? He laughed and said, well, it's 3 times 0, basically. So, like, that's like a fucking joke that you'd get salary in this. I agree. Like, you haven't shown any pedigree. By the way, what you've done right now is appropriate. You've played in the cheapest. By the way, most people in the NLC get nothing. I know it's the UK Elite. It gets fuck all. You've played in one of the worst DRLs. Admittedly, you've mega overperformed in all the AMA tournaments. You've won those. I mean, you do have, by the way, 2 fucking Hall of Fame players. Well, probably not Hall of Fame. 2 a player, but Hall of Fame player in your team, and one that was an LEC quality player. Like, you have some big names, but yeah, I know what you mean. They haven't met any of the criteria. They've yet to show they can run an esports org, right?
Yeah.
By the way,
just
do you not
5 men
think
playing in a game?
Do you not think it's incredibly, to me, it leaves a really bad taste in the mouth that you've got a guy running an esports org where the players aren't played? Okay, there's a bit of context behind that, I guess, but whatever. They are playing in a league and so on. Who also is going to take a free ride into the LEC, but has also said that he would never, like, spend any of his own money to be a part of the LEC, but also was really fine with just taking the Saudi bag. I think that's, like, crazy, and none of that money's been, like, filtered back into the org as far as I can see. So it's like, I don't know.
Well,
like,
it just isn't an org. Let's just be real. It's a shit brand to begin with. It's not an org in any conventional sense. You know this as somebody that ran an org,
Doesn't it
right?
just build his own fan base as well? I don't really get the premise.
Sure. I mean, like, let's be clear. The net beneficiary of this decision isn't the league, isn't even the players in Los Ratones. It's Cadrell. Yeah, I mean, he's the guy that ultimately, like, all of a sudden the salary problems go away. He's got a stipend now. I mean, you know, all of the...
He probably won't have a stipend.
Why not? Why would he be prevented from?
It's a kickoff tournament. It's not LEC, right?
No,
like,
but I mean, I'm
officially.
talking about when he's lifted into LEC. Clearly, that's the long-term plan here.
If Riot wants to buy a slot and let Los Ratones in, fine. I don't think anybody cares, because the problem is that what you're doing is you're devaluing the asset that people bought.
By the way, in case people haven't thought this through, logically, if you get big enough as a separate brand that you get a guest slot, then why does anyone ever buy anyone else's slot? Which, as I told you, was the only aspect of franchising that has worked. And people like Karmine Corp had to go through that hoop. So if that's never activated again, then you were just the last soccer in the pyramid scheme.
But crucially, the difference with the guest slot and, you know, Los Ratones in winter is that they don't get the revenue sharing that the other teams get. They don't get, and it's not really stipends
but
anymore.
The joke is, right now, that would still work out hella for them on the equation.
Sure.
Monte. In NFL, that's soccer not to get the revenue.
But, like,
right now, that just means they don't lose
for an
money.
org that pays $0, who will only its purpose is to promote Cadrell and its players' streams. This is actually very beneficial. But I don't think even if they got into LEC via guest slot, because Sentinels, let me be very clear, 100 Thieves and Sentinel, when 100 Thieves bailed on the franchise slot and it turned into a guest slot, they were no longer receiving the revenue share. Okay? So that is what Sentinels, that is the experience that Sentinels is opting into. And you could say, well, they would probably, you know, what is the value of an LCS slot right now? Nothing. I mean, not much, really. And like, would they lose more money by spending money on a franchise fee versus just losing money hosting a team? And if they're confident that they can, you know, make money via sponsorships to cover the, you know, falling costs of an LCS team, because nobody fucking watches that region anymore, which we'll get to, then that's fine. But people who are mad are missing the point. You can get mad that franchising sucks. You can get mad that Los Ratones isn't an LEC. You could say that this is objectively good for viewership. We can agree on all of these things, by the way. But the problem is that Riot created the model, and you can't just suddenly devalue the assets, because that is a very bad long-term strategy. Whatever you think about the entertainment factor of LEC in winter this year, it is devaluing the assets of the LEC because you are saying, okay, well, we promised you exclusivity, and the value of your slot is the only value is exclusivity to tier 1 competition. And so when we just say, well, we're going to add another split, and also this split doesn't matter, which also we can read between the lines, because what Kometo was tweeting about with Karmine Corp is, he said, what's stopping me from sending my team to boot camp in Korea for winter? And what this tells us, guys, is that the back door to this that Riot has done contractually is they said, well, you know, those contracts that we had you sign about exclusivity, well, they only applied to spring and summer split, and we just added this winter split. So now we can do whatever we want with it. And that also means that the teams are not contractually obligated to play their tier 1 rosters within that league. And in a way, it is a good idea for Karmine Corp or Mad Lions or these teams to play their ERL rosters, their tier 2 rosters, to get them more experience, and for them to take their primary teams and fuck off to Korea to boot camp to include. Like, it's actually just objectively a good idea. But what Riot has done is they have broken their own rules about that competition, and they've opened Pandora's box, because now objectively, we can just say objectively, the value of LEC slots has gone down. There's no way to say it hasn't gone down. It is worth less now because of this announcement than it was, period, end of story.
Which, remember, this very year or last year, whenever it was, because there was that rumor that the Falcons desperately wanted in, but they were turned away, etc., it was still implied LEC was a huge market, bro. If you have the people who just say, like, can I pay infinite money? And there's a secondary detail. I've never even heard this topic discussed. I've only heard it mentioned in passing. But it's also mental if you are the likes of the Karmine Corp. Do you know one of the things that Karmine Corp does that G2, the perennial champions of the LEC, do not even do? G2 does not have, like, a proper fucking ERL team. They don't even attempt to do that, right? Karmine Corp runs an LEC team, which was the champion, and an ERL team, which is one of the best ones in one of the best ERLs.
And they've created a real pipeline for talent, too.
Think about this. Because you made the context, instead of just saying, I'm inviting Los Ratones, this is a Dana White business move, their box office, I'm going to get them in the league. Because you said, I'm letting 2 EMEA teams in, the ERL teams of people like Karmine Corp compete in the EMEA tournament. What if they won it, Monte? Logically, you wouldn't be able to bring the second team in. So you've also now devalued the fucking ERL slot. It is so mad how they have actually just fucked their current business partners for someone who isn't yet a business partner and won't even be buying. It's so, like, I totally am on the side of Casey on this. One's crazy.
Yeah. And also, like, Kometo probably had to sell part of his ownership in his team to afford, because, like,
he even said the same thing. He said the reason I can't boycott is because I have all the investor pressure. Obviously,
so but like, how is it fair that Kometo created his own phenomenon with his own money, and then to buy in, he had to buy into LEC, and no streamer, by the way, except for maybe XQC, is rich enough to buy the slot. So you have to get investors.
I've got the quote here for you. I had it prepped from his stream where he talked about this. And he said, the rumors about the LEC, this is talking about the leak on Sheep Esports. The rumors about the LEC, they're real. This is what's happening. It's real. And again, the version that was leaked is a far less egregious one compared to what was planned at first. Far, far worse than the leaked one. And the thing is, that is pissing me off to death, is that this bullshit, that it's for the ERL argument, is the highest degree of bullshit, bro. It's mad how much bullshit this is. They don't give a single flying fuck about ERL. It's been 5 years that we have been struggling in ERL. We won and won again everything in ERL. We also did 300k viewers back in the day. They don't give a fuck about ERL. Genuinely, why do they lie like that? And I said that to their face in private, mind you, during the meeting that went from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. the day before the match. They really don't give a shit about ERL, mate. I'm going to say to y'all, he dropped a y'all, apparently, what's happening? Los Ratones are a UFO. They make crazy stats, all of that. And I'm fine with it, no problem. We all agree that Cadrill's team and everything is crazy. They're doing crazy stats. But we also did crazy-ass stats. We also turned upside down ERL. Without K-Core, there would be 15 less clubs in ERL right now. And yeah...
By the way, just to corroborate what he's saying quickly, I'll tell you a detail about Karmine Corp that I, in the past, have obviously portrayed as crazy, but it very salient to this conversation. Did you know that when Karmine Corp took Reckless, who was the most famous European player ever, he is way more famous than Caps, literally the numbers show you this, they took him from G2, the #1 team in theory in org, they took him to an ERL and paid him something like 300,000 euros a year. Meanwhile, Los Ratones has the same Reckless for free.
Yeah.
That just to corroborate, Kamato's not wrong. He did do. Keep going anyway.
Yeah. No worries. No, it's a good point. Additional information. He said.
By the way, Richard,
sure.
just for context on the first thing he said. So I don't know if this is in the articles or whatever. The original thing that was posited by Riot was that Los Ratones would have a path to Worlds. By the way, not first stand, literally to Worlds. That was what was originally pitched, and the teams went apoplectic.
As they
and
should.
Then Riot. Yeah, the Riot did the classic, like, well, now we can see reasonable if we walk it back and be like, all right, only first stand then. And then, you know, they're thinking like, well, they can't be that mad because the original thing was like on steroids stupid, and this is only really, really stupid. But actually, to my surprise, the teams sort of saw through that veil. So, yeah.
Well, no, don't apologize. It's a quite long quote. Someone did excellent work in translating an entire stream, so it's quite sizable.
I don't know what the French for y'all is. But
I
don't know. That's a directly correct translation.
But anyway, he said, yeah, I'm going to be arrogant here. We were trailblazers in this domain. A lot of people followed because they saw our success. It worked out for some, not so much for others. And Los Ratones is killing it right now. But if Cadril doesn't want to buy a slot and take risks like we did, then he will stay in ERL like we did before him. There was one year where I ended up crying on stream because a deal fell through that could have allowed us to go to the LEC. And bro, my dream was shattered. I had sleeping problems because of it, and that's fine by me because the money wasn't there at that time. If you get into a store and you have no money on you, you just walk out and come back when you have the money. It's the same thing here. If you don't want to take the risks and the problems we had to face, I fully understand it. But why does it suddenly become my problem? And once again, I found their project to be incredible, but since then, the price of slots has dropped, and they could definitely manage to buy. So that's the quote. And it's look, first of all, everything he says there is accurate in terms of the impact that K-Core has had. But I mean, also as well, like, it does seem reasonable to say that there should be at least some, like, even if you, like, okay, if this was a fair and equitable world and Riot were a fair and equitable company, what you would do is you would charge Los Ratones whatever a slot is worth now, which, by the way, I think it's dropped considerably prior to this announcement. I think all franchise slots are in the bin, and it's not even just Riot's fault. The Overwatch League looms so large. The Force ghost of the Overwatch League in here. They're just looking down on all franchise league models in esports. They're just a bad idea. I would go so far as to say they're probably worth a tenth of what people paid for them. And so you charge Los Ratones a fee of some nominal sort of whatever you believe a slot to be worth by the current market value. Which, by the way, Los Ratones could certainly stump up 2 million, let's say. And then what you do is you give back a little bit of money to all of the other fucking owners in the league and say, look, okay, we realize that we've devalued the slot by this decision. As a result, we're going to give you a slight rebate on it, have $1 million each. Everyone's going to be happy with that, There's definitely a way to work around this, but it is insulting to like, K-Core got the biggest beef out of anyone. Because they literally walked the same and paid their way in. So I totally understand why they're upset. And this is just how Riot treats business partners. They don't care. They don't care about your feelings. They want to do what's right for the product, and their argument will be whatever they deem is right for the product is de facto good for you. Because without the product, you don't have anything. But it's not that simple. The NFL couldn't just without talking to all the other owners, the NFL couldn't just create an expansion league. You think, like, by the way, they want to do one in Britain, right? You think that the owners aren't consulted on that. You think that when we get, like, the fucking London Monarchs or whatever in 2032, do you think, like, the owners aren't going to get some money back for it, aren't going to be consulted on the idea, the branding, all of this stuff about traveling and having the games abroad? We had an NFL game in Brazil, right? It's like, you don't think the fucking owners of the teams are consulted on this? You think the league just says, you are going to Brazil, Kansas City? No, of course fucking not. Like, it's a partnership. Riot never understood what the term partnership means. They think partnership is like being in a fucking partnership in prison. And they're Big Daddy. It's
by the way, I mean, it's not even really all devil's advocate, but to flip it on from the Riot POV of what I think, obviously, this isn't some unique viewpoint or whatever. It's all very present and obvious. But Riot is doing this for viewership reasons.
Sure.
League of Legends in general, particularly in the West, has a massive problem with viewership. Now, you'll never know the extent to that problem because they stopped publishing the numbers in Chex Notes about 2014 or something ridiculous. Because as soon as they didn't see that line going straight up in the air, they thought, this might not look the best to always publish these numbers. But basically, they know that they can bolster some LEC viewership, at least for the next year or so, if they bring Lost Returners in, and they can pretend that the numbers aren't going down. Now, League of Legends has a real big problem where basically Riot is now making moves year on year to preserve and redirect viewership rather than to get new viewership. And why this is happening is ultimately because you will not find people who watch League of Legends esports who do not play the game, or at least played the game at some point. Obviously, there are loads of people now who don't have time to play the game, or they don't. I mean, I don't think any of us play the game. Maybe you do. I haven't played the game in fucking years, but at one point, I'm sure we did all pick up a mouse and keyboard and play the game.
Yeah.
To just understand it on some level.
I
You will not
uninstalled
find
it
fans.
before Vanguard, but Vanguard would have been a deal breaker. Obviously,
Yeah,
so.
I haven't played it
yeah.
at all since Vanguard came out.
Yeah.
Sure, but that is the biggest problem, is that you cannot get new mainstream people to understand League. It is not a viscerally easy to understand intuitive game. Something like Rocket League, which obviously isn't as popular as League of Legends or whatever, it's football with
Or
flying
Counter-Strike.
cars. Like, it's a pretty... Yeah, it's a basic concept, like see head, click head, in Counter-Strike, like see goal, kick ball in goal with car. Bit out there, I guess, conceptually, but it's easy to understand, right? League of Legends is just a smorgasbord of oversaturated colors colliding if you don't know what the fuck's going on or what a MOBA is. So you will never get new viewers who did not first play the game. Now, they missed the boat on making the most of things like Arcane to desperately try and get more people to play the game, to then ultimately convert them also into viewers. But as I said, they haven't really capitalized on that. So this is another one of those more drastic moves they're trying to do, so people like Monte or whoever don't publish the down 63% graph like the next time around. I know that was in relation to LCS, but you take the point. Viewership is not tanking in the way it is in America, but it is still going down. LEC is dying an excruciatingly slow death. They have stage 1 cancer, right? LCS, as I'm sure we'll talk about, has stage 4 cancer, sure. But LEC still has cancer. It's in the early stages, and it feels like we've been here for a while. But, it's still going. So that is a big problem that they're trying to bolster. And Lost Returners is the ultimate bandage for the next, call it, year and a half, 2 years, where that's going to, pique the interest. So that's why they're doing it. And that's why they're saying fuck you to all
Just like Kometo and Ibai were the previous bandage where they, and honestly, they got thrown a huge bone by Kometo and Ibai's interest because they brought along these new fan bases that didn't exist previously, got them into League of Legends, and then massively boosted LEC's viewership. But if you want to see how that went, just look at how Ibai just had his Valorant slot revoked because he wasn't doing the co-streaming that they expected of him. So they just stole his Valorant. Well, obviously, sorry. I will be more precise in my language. They can't steal it because it was theirs in the first place. In Valorant, he didn't buy it. He was given the partnership slot. But they did punish him for not doing the co-streaming that he said he was going to do, or the org said he was going to do for the slot. And at the end of the day, now the co-streamers are just Riot's bitch, where they threaten you, mafia style, to, shame. It'd be a shame if something happened to this nice partnership. You got to co-stream in order to keep it up, Ibai. But he is responsible for driving a huge amount of viewership to Riot. And this company is so ingrateful that if he doesn't co-stream Valorant, well, fuck you. You know what I mean? He's basically just a hostage of Riot Games now. But the point is that...
By the way... Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, considering how unbelievably big Ibai is, if
unreal.
you've seen those boxing events and stuff, he's put
Billions?
on crazy numbers. Breaking worldwide records, by the way, not just Spanish speaking countries records, the actual world records for biggest streams ever or whatever. How many people is he actually percentage wise converted to League of Legends?
Yeah.
Bugger all, really.
Yeah. But
which is always the problem that the game has had, right?
You're and to Rich's point, you're talking about millions of concurrents, higher than LEC has ever gotten anywhere close to. And this guy is, okay, so he has 100,000 for LEC, but that's still like a very small fraction of the audience that we've seen that he's capable of generating. So like, I think that this whole thing is just so outrageous because Riot, they use you and then they throw you out when they don't need you anymore. And these are Band-Aid fixes, just like Kometo and Ibai's co-streams were Band-Aid fixes. Ibai's not streaming because remember, he has somebody else co-streaming LEC. Now, he doesn't do it anymore because, frankly, and this is true, it's just beneath him. When you can have millions of concurrents on your boxing matches, it is beneath you to co-stream every fucking game of LEC. And so he has somebody else, that is doing that now and still gets good viewership, right? Still is a net contributor to the league, but they have to look for, it's the new drug. And Los Ratones is the new drug that will, solve the problem for, like Rich says, for a year or so. But what's after that? That's the next question is what's after that? And if the long-term strategy is to burn your partners and say, like, we will sacrifice the value that you have in this league, who's going to invest in this league? Tell me. Like, the teams aren't going to invest anymore. You criticize, the fans criticize certain LEC orgs for just coasting, but like, why wouldn't everybody coast now? You know what? You've now just disincentivized everybody because you've said, we will devalue your asset. What is the purpose behind investing into LEC? What is it? And like, you may be like, a seal clapping, yay, Los Ratones in winter. But what happens in a year, guys, when nobody's investing? The product goes to shit. Like you have literally just completely sacrificed any trust that any owner could possibly have in you. What's the future?
It'd be interesting to see if there were owners that would consider like selling up as a result of this. But then you've got
what's the value?
Of course. Yeah, what's the value and who's the buyer, right? This is the classic. It's like you got to be careful when you pick up these toxic assets, because I mean, like we all knew like 10 mil, 20 mil. We all knew these numbers were fucking la la land, even at the peak. And we all know what Riot's like as a partner. Some of us firsthand, right? 2 people on this call. But yeah, this is just, it's like, I fully get the frustration of particularly Karmine Corp on this one. There was also another really illuminating thing that he said in there where he was talking about how they wanted to do a show match against, they were told you can't have a top LEC team to do a show match against. They wanted to do a live show match in a stadium. And they said we could get 20,000 people in to watch. And so they pitched doing like SK Gaming when they were like the 9th or 10th seeded team in like LEC. And Riot said no, there can't be. It would break the ecosystem. They said. I just don't get it.
I mean, they've always been like, even going as back as like I remember like 2015, like Unicorns of Love wanted to do some like charity streams, by the way, with like amateur teams against their pro teams. And Riot were like, nope, not allowed. We are the sole deciders of like what happens and what takes place. We are the only team. Obviously, you'll notice that's changed a little bit since the Saudis pulled out their fucking Fort Knox bolts. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, even charity streams are getting turned down. So,
by the way, that's actually one thing, since we have Rich here, I wanted to ask him about. Actually, he has the unique position that he was literally in the meetings when LEC franchising was pitched, and he was one of the people actually like pushing back on certain things, or like seeing who just was willing to go along with it, etc. And no matter what every dickhead fan tells you now, yes, H2K was a well-funded team at the time, and they were a team that would have been in position to buy a team. Remember, there were squads that went with like North Football, and that don't even fucking exist anymore in esports, guys. So absolutely, it's not the case of like, lol, some meme shit. You're salty because you didn't get in the league. So can you give us some insight? Like, how did they pitch this? Like, put it this way, does what we know now, is this would this have been crazy to open a fucking Doctor Strange portal and tell the teams in that meeting, like, look what they'll do to you? Like, I mean, it would actually be like 7 or so years now or something like, 6, 7 years.
I mean, the thing is, like, someone who might have like heard this sort of line from me for the first time might be like, Captain Hindsight. But I was talking about this on shows with you, Thorin, literally like 6 years ago at this point, saying, I'm going to tell you exactly what is going to happen, in the same way I told Riot exactly what was going to happen when franchising happened, which is if you keep it on these terms or you go forward with these terms, you will have investor carousel for the first however many years until the valuation has gone down so low because of the general consciousness has actually caught up with reality that you will just be left with nothing. And that is the path they were always on. That's the path they're still on now. All of that came true. And basically, for people that don't know, what we actually did is we partnered with PSG, right? And we put together, as Thorin said, even though in the end, out of sort of protest, we didn't put any money into the game for the last year, we were the richest. I mean, just to give you an idea, there is a hedge fund group called Renaissance in America, which is one of the richest hedge funds groups in the world. They are astronomically large. We're talking hundreds of billions. They were who were backing H2K, who would then also partner with PSG. Riot said no to us, and I would have done the same if I were them, because they believed that we were just going to attack them on every single point, and we were just going to hold the whole process up, and we were going to refuse to sign anyway unless it was on our terms, basically. So, like, you know what? You've got PSG and the most money, but we're still going to say fuck you, because even though that on paper is a great partnership, we don't want people pushing back.
There
want
were
yes
also
men,
1,000
basically.
suckers at the time due to the hype who could fill your spot, and you know that's what happened, right? So
Exactly. But I mean, yeah, but the thing is, like, even then, even when we were in the meetings that were like coming closer towards the cutoff point where deals were going to have to be made, we sat down and we were like, if we get accepted in, or like if we get offered the terms, it's going to be an ultimatum. They're not going to ask for us to negotiate or which points don't you agree with. They're going to say take it or leave it. And we had two options at the time if that was going to happen. One, which is we just say no straight up, which was what we were leaning towards anyway. Or two, we say yes and then immediately flip the slot. Like, as soon as we possibly can, flip the slot. Because it's never going to be worth more than it is under the delusional bubble now of esports, where this was still at a time where idiots or like non-endemics still actually read Forbes articles and were like, holy smokes, TSM's worth $500 million today. How that's valuation today, dickhead.
Yeah.
Like, that is insane. And now look at these teams and these organizations. So, I mean, we're talking about it being worth a tenth of the value or whatever. I think that's just like a realistic angle where you're like, realistically, what could you sell a slot for? Versus it's not worth anything. It's a money sink. It's literally worth minus money. Unironically, you will not turn a profit. It is impossible.
Kometo was saying that as well, to be fair. He kept saying, I've gone back to zero. I've lost millions on this, you know. But
Of course, there's no way to make money on the term. And the thing is, it's not about like, but the partnership deals are 3 years on a rolling situation where we can renegotiate. It doesn't matter. Once you're in on the initial terms, you do not have the power to drastically change it after 3 years. Like, once you've signed that initial document, you have no legs to stand on. So it's always going to be on Riot's terms. It's always going to be ultimately, well, I have 6 out of the 10 teams who are agreeing to Riot's terms, so you guys have to come on board, or we can give you a slot away, or whatever. Like, you actually have no power. Just because you signed the initial contract, that doesn't mean jack shit. So once those initial terms were put in front of people, and by the way, the initial terms were horrendous, like absolutely terrible, with, again, no pipeline to ever making money. It's not, we're saying no to digital sales now or whatever in year 1. There was nothing in there. It was just, well, we're going to keep trucking along as we have been now, with the same shitty subsidies. Actually, no, sorry, with worse subsidies. But because, you know, you now have the security blanket of you can tell sponsors you're a franchise team who isn't going anywhere, that should really get the dollars up. It's like, it's not really how it works, though, is it? Because there's actually no fucking value in being one of 10 teams, like, streaming on to 100K viewers. Like, what the fuck is this? So, yeah, I mean, it was just horseshit from the start. By the way, I will say for complete clarity, we were actually pro-franchising. That is very public. We were pro-franchising, but obviously that doesn't mean anything. That's just like saying you're pro-fucking whatever, but it's the devil's in the details, and we got none of our details in that contract. Right. So ultimately,
and also
they kicked us out, hee hee ha ha, but we wouldn't have signed it anyway.
The reason why the terms got better was because, and the reason why franchising even happened on the timeline it did was because of Overwatch League. Like, Riot was not planning to do it that quickly, and it was the announcement of Overwatch League and the franchising model that pushed them to accelerate their own plans. And then, intelligently, the owners negotiated both sides and did get more, I'm not going to say favorable, but more favorable terms from Riot as a result of Overwatch League. Still bad terms, it has to be said. And the fact that, you know, this is what has mind-boggled me about the owners in this situation, is the team owners, is that they never push back. Why can't they get together and collectively negotiate this? Like, we know that well, we don't know. We have heard from what Kometo has said that these teams, none of the LEC teams agreed to this bullshit in the winter split. Why is it that in their team participation agreement, why is it that you have a commissioner who should be representing the teams in the sense that the word commissioner and the position in sports league is a representative of the ownership teams and their interest? Why is the commissioner not elected by the teams? Why is the commissioner paid for and whose only loyalty is to Riot Games and their incentives, which are not aligned with team incentives? Their only incentive is to maximize viewership for marketing reasons. It is not to help the teams be profitable, right? It is not to be in the team's best interest. They have no control over the format. They have no control over the leadership of the league. They have no control over anything. They can unanimously disagree with this move by LEC, and it still gets forced upon them. It's outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is also, you know, a problem that we've seen. There's not really anything you can do to move Riot's hand historically, and even if you think there is, there's people in the orbit of the League of Legends ecosystem that'll find a way to fuck it up for you. You know, we saw that with the walkout, right, when the teams were gonna like not play. There's just, unfortunately, it's just a very one-sided deal. It's not even a Faustian pact. It's not that you align yourself with a shitty company with a dubious history, but you make profit from it. It's the complete antithesis of the Saudi deal, because ultimately you're compromising all of your scruples, but you're not getting anything in return except this sort of like tenuous dream, like, you know, in the future you might make some money. How would you do that? Well, you might sell the slot, I guess.
That's okay. They have emotes now in game that, you know, pay like, you know, a few cents to the team per one they sell.
It was on the wall, basically. Like, I remember one time I obtained, this is way back, but I obtained like amount of money teams were making on those like emote icons. And I got, and dude, the drop off was fucking insane. Like, I mean, these teams were making nothing off that. Like,
I can tell you exactly how much we made from
well, what was that?
icons. We in the year where 2016, so when we had like a lot of popular players on the team, and also like a lot of national pride attached to some of the players, like Vander and Jankos from Poland, obviously, like Forgiven, whatever. The total number, like the amount that was made from selling was 16,000. But obviously, we only got a percentage of that. So I think we actually end up taking $8,000 from that. So brilliant. That'll fund the team. But the thing is, the teams
a week's salary for a player or something.
Yeah, they're not even the biggest victims here. The biggest victim of this whole situation is Nemesis, because that motherfucker is going to have to actually play against real mid laners now, and this whole fucking mythos is going to explode.
I like how on two
fucking
topics you
Vesuvius.
stuck into Nemesis. That's really good.
I mean,
well, it is,
you know.
Rich, it is annoying if you've been in League of Legends, because there has been this, it's really Nemesis's fans. They've created this mystique around him, like, oh, he could be one of the best mid laners, not only in Europe, in the world. He's just streaming now. It's like, bro, if he was super good, someone would just give him the bag and he would just play for a really good team.
Oh, but Monte, you've misrepresented this already. It's not he could be. It's he is.
Oh, he is, yes.
He just happens to be streaming. He has decided not to walk the path of Faker and those before him and just, you know, stream to a bunch of incels and said, no. He is. He is just he is the retired guy in that Key and Peele sketch where it's like, you know, the retired assassin that the government flies helicopters out to, and they're like, we need you now more than ever for one last mission. And he's like, nah, I don't want to. It's like, Faker and Worlds Await, fuck it, I'll do it. That is that's the canon they have in their head about Nemesis. Like, this is his time, this is his moment, and First Stand will be the stage that is finally unveiled. But you know what? I think they might go out to in round 1 to Camillo or some shit. So, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up this topic, like, I genuinely do understand the frustration of everyone involved, and you know, playing favorites on this shit is like unconscionable, because this is meant to be a sports league that is structured in a way sports leagues are. I also think, just broadly speaking, if it goes ahead the way I think it's going to go, where essentially they're going to crowbar Los Ratones into LEC by any means necessary, I think there's grounds for a lawsuit. I think I mean, keep in...
Surely you've acted in bad faith.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, that happened with the Overwatch League. It was all shrouded in mystery All of those, remember when all of the Overwatch franchise owners retained counsel, and when I asked them about it, I was going, oh, I've heard you've retained counsel, I've got the name of the lawyers and everything. They were all going, oh, it's just to make it easier to communicate with Activision Blizzard. That way we have one point of contact for all of us. Like, motherfucker, they're specialists in this type of litigation. You know, then we know exactly what's going on. And of course, they were actually able to get, I think it was like $6 million back each in lieu of a lawsuit, which is what went on. And by the way, I've said that many times, and Activision Blizzard have never corrected it. And then we just dissolved the Overwatch League, and like no one even talks about it now. We just pretend it never happened. So I think if they do crowbar Los Ratones is, I mean, first of all, you can already make a legal argument now that in doing what they're doing, they are harming the business interests of their partners, which would no doubt, I mean, in America, it would come under a tort. I don't know in Germany what this would be, but I imagine there's an equivalent. So you've already got that argument you can make legally. If they crowbar them in and essentially give them a free slot, I mean, absolutely. All the owners get together and they sue Riot. I mean, it's as simple as that. So, but yeah, it's just crazy. And like I say, K-Core most affected. Didn't think, it's the Gimli and Legolas meme, isn't it? Didn't think I would die fighting side by side with Kometa. And he turns to me and he goes, well, how about someone that's been wronged by Riot? I can do that.
By the way, here's see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content. Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.